Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Dr. Sarvat Rasool and I am introducing to you a course on study skills. This is our first session, that is on Introduction to Study Skills. Before I go ahead with the session, I would like to share with you who I am. As your instructor, I think it would be a good idea to give my introduction. Well, as I have already said, I am Dr. Sarvat Rasool. When I share my academics with you, I would like to say I have a degree in Masters in English Language and Literature, a Master's degree in English as a foreign language, and a Master's degree in Political Science. And then I have a PhD in Linguistics. This defines very well my area of specialization and my field of work. Within linguistics, bilingualism is my main area of study for my PhD, and it very much relates to our country and the academic contexts in which all of us work. With this, I move on to the course. Giving an introduction to the course, I would say this is a course on study skills, and following are the objectives of the course. The first objective of the course is to provide the students the knowledge of study skills. Secondly, to help them know how these are related to their study as a distance learner and how they can use study skills as tools to perform efficiently in different subjects. The third objective of the course is to give the students practice in the use of these study skills. And finally, the fourth objective is to enable them to use these study skills in their academic contexts. As far as the breakdown of the course contents is concerned, the course contents are divided into 32 lectures or sessions. They are sequenced logically, thus each session leads towards the next. Most of the sessions are complete and independent in themselves. However, since some topics cannot be covered in one session, they are extended to 2 or 3 sessions. In case a session is a continuation of the previous session or sessions, it is mentioned clearly at the outset of the session. I would also like to share with you the pattern that is followed in each of the sessions. Almost the same pattern of presentation is followed in each session. At the outset of each session, the topic is introduced, defined, and explained before the lecture is started. Its significance is also addressed. Then the contents of topic that are covered under that topic are broken into small pieces of information to be shared. This breakdown of session is shared at the beginning of the session and is repeated as a review at the end as well. Almost each session has exercises and activities that are included to give the students some hands-on practice. And as I said earlier, review of the session is presented at the end. With this, we move on to our today's session, that is our first session on study skills. I would like to share a preview of today's session before I go on. Today's session introduces what are study skills and then provides a wider perspective on study skills as well. Then I would move on to why it is important to have the study skills developed. I would also talk about the importance of study skills for a distance learner. Role of study skills in distance learning and knowing yourself as a distance learner is the next area that I would cover in this session. With this, I would move on to what do you generally find in study skills courses or books. And then I would share with you the course outline or the contents list of your study skills course. I would also talk about which study skills are important for you as distance learners. And finally, I would talk about how to improve your distance learning study skills. Well, by introducing the term study skills, this is how I would start today's session. And to introduce study skills, I would say study skills or study strategies are approaches that are applied to learning. Study skills are generally considered essential for acquiring good grades and useful for learning in academic as well as other contexts. There is a wide range of study skills which are involved in the process of organizing and taking in new information, retaining information, or dealing with assessments. In today's academic context, unlike the traditional approach, these study skills are not left up to the student only. Rather, these study skills are increasingly taught in schools, colleges, and universities. A number of books, materials, websites, and other resources are available, ranging from specific techniques to general guidelines to successful study. Well, talking of the historical context of study skills, I would say that study skills have always been important in formal education, and in formal academic contexts, study skills have always been given a very significant place. However, it was in the 19th century, at the outset of the 19th century, that study skills have been recognized as a formal part of teaching and learning situations, where it is considered important that students should be taught these study skills so that they are well equipped and better prepared to study in different contexts. When it comes to distance learning situations where students are distant learners and they are not in direct contact with the teacher in the traditional face-to-face classroom, the importance of these study skills further increases, because to manage the time, stress, and the materials of their study, everything becomes the responsibility of the student. In this situation, study skills enable the learners to handle with the study materials in a far efficient and effective way. These also have their roots in psychology, because people working on human behavior have worked a lot around the issues and the areas of behavior towards time management, behaviors towards stress management, behavior towards different communication skills such as listening, speaking, reading, and writing, etc. So the course on study skills, when it is taught as a formal course to equip the students with the study skill tools, actually it works around the change, rather I would say the needed change in the behavior of students towards studies. Well, I have already defined what study skills are. However, study skills can be looked at from a wider perspective as well. In a broader sense, any skill which enables, helps, or boosts a person's ability to study and pass exams can be termed as a study skill. This implies that study skills include a wide range of array, from time management to stress management, language skills to efficient use of memory, vocabulary development to presentation skills. Study skills are distinct techniques that can be learned usually in a short time. Study skills are and can be applied to almost all fields of study, irrespective of which subject or course you are studying. Thus, study skills are to be distinguished from strategies that are specific to a particular field of study. So the purpose of study skills course is to equip you with those general skills that you can apply to all the courses to have better results or to perform better. They do not involve any particular skill that is specifically related to a particular subject. As far as the relationship of study skills and distance learning is concerned, I would say that study skills are a very important tool that can be used by distant learners. The trend of distance learning is increasing day by day. This ubiquity is reflected in the increase in the numbers involved in one form or other of distance learning. More than 40% of students in higher education in the UK are now part-time learners, and so are likely to be spending at least part of their time at a distance from their institution, their teachers and their fellow students. The growth of distance learning worldwide in the last 30 years has also been quite phenomenal and almost impossible to quantify. The world's largest university is a distance university in China, the Central China Radio and Television University, with 2.7 million students. The second largest is also a distance university, the Indira Gandhi University. This is the Indira Gandhi National Open University with around 1.5 million students. In the UK, the largest university is the Original Open University with around 2 lakh students, more than the next 5 largest UK universities combined. As far as Pakistan is concerned, the trend of distance learning in Pakistan is also increasing day by day. And with this increasing trend, that actually is kind of indication that there are a lot of people who cannot somehow, because of their varied and personal reasons, cannot get formal face-to-face education. Still they are interested in getting education, and especially higher education. So in that context, distance learning is being used in Pakistan as a very, very successful way of teaching and learning at higher education level. In this context, when we talk of Pakistani distance learner students equipped with well-versed study skills, it becomes very easy for them to tackle and to handle the materials that they are supposed to learn. It is very important for you as a distance learner to know yourself. Distance education is based on the premise that students are at the center of the learning process, take responsibility for their own learning and work at their own pace and in their own place. It is about ownership and autonomy. So the main responsibility of learning or the teaching learning process itself lies with the student in distance education. This also qualifies my statement when I say that distance learners need study skills more than other students. When it comes to study skills for distance learners, actually in distance learning often there is a requirement for the students of a degree of initiative and mental resilience, not always associated with learning in a classroom with a peer group and a teacher in attendance. So here students have to take more initiative, have to show more motivation, they have to be more efficient in their time management, they have to deal with their stress on their own, and they have to untangle, open and unfold the complexities of the texts that they deal themselves. Learning alone can be difficult despite encouragement from friendly tutors, especially if you are not accustomed to studying. And in this context also study skills help a lot. Study skills for distance learners are very similar to those for classroom learners. However, the degree of the need in general is more when it comes to the distance learners, that they need the study skills more developed so that they could independently handle their studies. Students often take courses through distance education because of the flexibility it offers. As a distance student, you may have an extra challenge because you are often juggling your courses plus other responsibilities such as work and family. So study skills support you at that point in managing your time as well. As the very word distance applies, distance learning takes place when you, the student, are geographically remote from the educational institution at which you are registered. You will also be remote from your tutor and other students for most of the times or all of the times. You may be studying when at home or at work, or while you are temporarily living away from usual home, or perhaps at some other place in some other country. So in all these situations, it is important that you are independent enough and you are confident enough to tackle your study materials. This is what makes the role of study skills important in the lives of distant learners. Such a change in delivery mode brings greater choice and flexibility to the learner in terms of pace, place and time, of day or night and day or days of the week of learning. But it also brings with it many challenges for the students. One of the greatest challenges is that you do not get immediate feedback. You cannot contact immediately, which is possible in traditional circumstances of education, especially higher education. So it becomes important that you have all the communication skills and other study skills well developed so that you could use them to the maximum for your benefit. Well, you might feel threatened, but this is the time to relax. When I say who will succeed in studying at a distance, the simple answer is you will. Yes, you will. Just as with any program of study, it is acknowledged that studying at distance can be a mixed blessing, a great opportunity and a lot of hard work. The good news is that people perform at least as well studying as distance learners as they do studying face to face. And some people perform better. Many find that the advantages of being able to progress at their own pace where and when they choose to study far outweigh the disadvantages associated with distance learning. Others have succeeded in spite of experiencing difficulties, and still others have not completed their course because the challenges have been too great. Many of those who have dropped out have said that the main reason for lack of success was that they just had not known what to expect and never quite came to terms. And when I place it in the Pakistani context, the biggest of the challenges that students face is the lack of study skills, especially communication skills. Their inability to read efficiently, their inability to write effectively, etc. My dear students, I hope by so far you would be clear about the importance of study skills and their relation to distance learning. With this I move on, and what I would like to share is what do you generally find in study skill courses or books. Well, to give you an idea of what is generally taught as study skills, or what is presented in resource packs or books or on courses, I have just given you here a few examples of standard books on study skills. At the top here on the left you would see Regis Study Skills Guide, that is by Walsh Frank and Regis Chris. This is published by International Debate Education Association in 2008. And when I looked at the list of the contents, these are the main contents, the core contents that are identified in the list of contents. Environment and concentration in study, organizing time, reading speed and comprehension, vocabulary and spelling, memory of details and factual information, taking notes, participating in classroom discussions, taking tests, writing up papers and essays, using advisors and counselors. Here on the right side of the slide you would see another column, another list, where the title of the book from where it is taken is Study Skills Strategies, Your Guide to Critical Thinking. And the book is published in 1994. The main areas that it covers under study skills are time control, note-taking techniques, critical reading skills, memory training, exam strategies, and mathematics study skills. I hope you would have been able to notice the main areas that any study skills course or book covers. However, I would share a couple of more examples with you. Here is a list at the left side column, in the left side column, that is taken from Study Skills Guide, Essential Strategies for Smart Students. And it's a very recent publication, as you can see, 2010. And the book covers mainly the following content areas: managing your time, effective study, information gathering and absorption, analysis, getting support from academic staff and others, the written word, making it work for you, and presenting successfully is the last topic that is covered. Another book, Studying at a Distance. Now this directly relates to the kind of situations you are in. Studying at a Distance, a guide for students. And again, this is a 2007 publication by the UK Open University Press, and it includes the following areas: preparing for distance learning, know yourself as a learner, practicalities of studying, getting support, e-learning, resources for studying, reading and note-taking, essays and written examinations, other forms of learning and assessment, and finally doing a research project. The purpose of sharing this variety of internationally published recent books on study skills was to provide you different perspectives on how study skills are approached by different authors, writers, or teachers or educationists in different ways. Well, as a matter of fact, the study skills course that I have designed for you includes almost all of the areas that I mentioned in these books, and of course more than this. However, I have a different system of organization of all this, which not only shows my perspective on this, but also I would like to share that, keeping in mind the Pakistani context where Pakistani learners need study skills, I have incorporated certain activities and certain topics and subtopics that suit the needs of Pakistani students. Before I go into the details of what contents I have included in your course and what exactly are the topics that you would cover under this course, I would like to share different types of study skills with you. People have looked at, as I have said, study skills from different perspectives, as I have shown it through the example of the content lists of different books. Here I am going to share with you another typology and a bifurcation of study skills contents with reference to their types. The first type is study skills based on memorization. Well, study skills based on memorization generally use rehearsal and rote learning. One of the most basic approaches to learning any information is simply to repeat it by rote. Typically, this will include reading over notes or a textbook and rewriting notes. I would say this is a very traditional and a very conservative way of using memorization as a study skill for learning purposes, and despite a few advantages, it has a lot of disadvantages. The second type is study skills based on communication skills. Well, study skills based on communication skills include reading, listening skills, etc. As I've already talked about rote learning, the weakness with rote learning is that it implies a passive reading or listening style. Educators such as John Davy had argued that students need to learn critical thinking, questioning, and weighing up evidence as they learn. And this is learned through lectures or reading when it comes to the use of communication skills as study skills. So the purpose of communication skills when they are developed as main study skills is to enable the students to be not only comfortable with but also be effective and efficient in the use of their communication skills, to explore, unpack and unfold any materials or information that they are supposed to learn. Another type is study skills based on methods that are visual methods. So study skills based on visual aids methods based. Mainly flashcards are the visual clues on cards that are used for this purpose. These have numerous uses in teaching and learning but can be used for revision as well. Students often make their own flashcards or more detailed indexed cards. Cards designed for filling, often A5 size, on which short summaries are written. Being discrete and separate, they have the advantage of allowing students to reread them, pick a selection to read over, or choose randomly for self-testing. So the purpose of these visual aids, when they are used as study skills or as an approach to exploit study skills, is to use cards, flashcards or other index cards, etc., to enable the student to remember something visually and to have it recorded on these index cards or flashcards, so that the student could effectively not only learn but also could choose, observe and then prepare for examination or any kind of evaluation with the help of these cards. The next type is study skills based on condensing information. This type also includes all sometimes the cards that are used to present information in a condensed form, but mainly this type deals with using summaries or keywords in order to summarize or condense information. Summary method varies depending on the topic, but most involve condensing the large amount of information from a course or a book into shorter notes. Often these notes are then condensed further into keywords or key facts. Different types of summaries are used. For example, organized summaries such as outlines showing keywords and definitions and relations, usually in a structure. Sometimes spider diagrams are used. Using these spider diagrams or mind maps can be an effective way of linking concepts together. They can be useful for planning essays and essay responses in exams. Sometimes they are also called mind maps. These tools can give a visual summary of a topic that preserves in its logical structure, with lines used to show how different parts link together. Later on, when you would go into the details of the course and you'd be going through the contents of the lesson, you would notice that I have devoted sessions separately for notes making or notes taking, as well as writing outlines, where all these study skills types that are based on condensing information are used. The next type of study skills is the type that is based on methods of visual imagery. Some learners are thought to have a visual learning style and will benefit greatly from taking information from their studies, which is often heavily verbal, and using visual techniques to help encode and retain it in their memory. By this, what I mean is using pictures or diagrams in order to enable the learner to retain what he or she has learned. In general, diagrams are taken as underrated tools, but they can be used to bring all the information together and provide practice, recognizing what has been learned in order to produce something practical and useful. They can also aid the recall of information learned very quickly, particularly if the student made the diagram while studying the information. Pictures can then be transferred to flashcards that are very effective last-minute revision tools rather than reading any written material. While we'd be going through the course and we'd be doing different parts of the contents, you would see that sometimes I have used charts or diagrams, or sometimes I have used pictures to enable you to remember something or to learn something. Well, this is another very interesting type of study skills that are based on examination strategies. The black, red, green method developed through the Royal Literary Funds Society helps the students to ensure that every aspect of the question posed has been considered, both in exams and essays. The student underlines relevant parts of the question using 3 separate colors or some equivalent. Black denotes blatant instructions, that is something that clearly must be done, a directive or obvious instruction. As far as red color is concerned, red is a reference point or required input of some kind, usually to do with definitions, terms cited by author or theory, etc., either explicitly referred to or strongly implied in the text. The third color, green, denotes gremlins, which are subtle signs one might easily miss, or a green light that gives a hint on how to proceed or where to place the emphasis in answers. Well, students, it's not necessary that you use black, red or green colors. You can devise your own code of colors. You can use different colors to highlight different parts of your reading materials for yourself to later see which parts mean what, which parts are more important, which are crucial from the examination point of view, etc. Another very important type of study skills are the study skills based on management and organization. These study skills are mainly based on time management, time organization, self-organization and lifestyle changes. Often improvements to the effectiveness of study may be achieved through changes to things unrelated to the study material itself, such as time management, boosting motivation and avoiding procrastination, and in improvements to sleep and diet, etc. If you are able to handle the unnecessary delays that you cause, the things that you unneededly delay for yourself or postpone, the lapses that occur because of your laziness, etc., this kind of management helps a lot in improving your study habits. Time management in study sessions aims to ensure that activities that achieve the greatest benefit are given the greatest focus. Generally, a traffic light system is a simple way of identifying the importance of information, highlighting or underlining information in colors, green, amber and red. Green, topics to be studied first, important and also simple. Amber, topics to be studied next, important but time consuming. And red, lowest priority, complex and not vital. Again, it is not a compulsion that you use the same color signs, but this is a process where you manage your time and you organize your study by using different color codes. You can use different colors, markers. If you are working on a computer or any other technical equipment, you can use electronic color coding as such to specify different areas and to identify different topics or subtopics. My dear students, with this we come to the course contents of our course. Well, I have designed the course around all that we have shared so far. So the course contents of this course are divided into 32 lectures. The first lecture is Introduction to Study Skills that you are listening to right now. The purpose of this lecture is to set a preamble or to provide an underpinning for the future learning that you would do under the course. In this session, I have introduced study skills and its main types, the contents of your course, etc. Lesson number 2 and lesson 3 are dedicated to the development of listening skill. What you can at the very outset notice is that I have started with communication skills, and other skills I have gradually and systematically, you would notice, I have incorporated with these communication skills. So your lesson number 2 is on listening skill, development of listening skill, and your lesson number 3 is on the development of speaking skill. However, since speaking skill, and especially when it comes to speaking of English as a foreign language, is very complicated for our students, and it involves a lot of factors that are to be addressed. This session is divided into two parts, and actually session 3 and session 4 are in continuation. Session 4 is also on development of speaking skills, that is part 2. Session 3 mainly dealt with the speaking skills in general, whereas session 4 is covering both, that is speaking skills in general but with specific focus on public speaking. As we move on to session 5 or lecture 5, we can notice that it is about the development of reading skill. And again, because reading is one of the main communication skills that you need for learning as a distance learner, so many sessions are devoted to it. Mainly sessions 5 and 6 are devoted to reading skills. In session 5, I have introduced what is reading and what are important reading skills or sub-skills. Some of them are covered in session 5, while the rest are covered in the development of reading skills part 2, that is session 6. Then there are certain reading skills or sub-skills that are of far great importance for the students or for learners in higher education context. So I have addressed them separately, and I have given you exercises and activities related to them as well. That is why sessions 7, 8, 9 and 10 are respectively devoted to skimming, scanning, reading comprehension part 1 and reading comprehension part 2. These reading comprehension sessions, especially the second session, they are more focused on giving you some practice in reading comprehension as well, which also of course involves practice in skimming and scanning, though it has separately been dealt with in 7 and 8 sessions. As you look through the slide, you would see that 3 sessions, that are session 11, 12 and 13, they are devoted to vocabulary building. Well, vocabulary building is a very, very important part of study skills, especially when it comes to the study skills that are needed for learning anything or studying anything in a second language or a foreign language. Considering the difficulties and the problems that are faced by Pakistani learners when it comes to the learning of English or studying courses that are in English, that are delivered and are tested both in English, I have developed these vocabulary building sessions, which would enable you to, number 1, handle your existing vocabulary in a good way. Number 2, by increasing your vocabulary by using prefixes, suffixes, synonyms, antonyms, etc. As main or basic tools for vocabulary building. Chapter 14 is on efficient use of memory. Well, in all those systems of education where orientation is towards success in examination, it is very important that you have a good memory. You have to retain what you have learned so that you could reproduce, think, use or critically analyze different aspects in relation to that learning when it comes to examination. That is why efficient use of memory is given a complete session in the course contents. And with this, I have moved on to session 15, where actually I have given you an introduction to the development of writing. Writing is presented in the sequenced order from listening to speaking to reading, and finally writing comes as the 4th main communication skill. However, when it comes to academic performance, maybe it is one of the most needed skills, because generally the testing process, taking examinations and performing in tests. It depends a lot on the writing skills of students. This session, that is session 15, it introduces writing skill and its main components or important characteristics or skills related to it. However, all this cannot be covered in one session, so important areas of writing skill are separately dealt with in the next few sessions. That is why the last session that you can see on this slide is session 16, which is about sentence structure. This is about the main construction of a sentence, its structure and different possibilities of its construction. With this we come to the next session, that is on sentence connectors, and what I hope you would have noticed is that gradually and systematically, actually from sentence onwards, we would move on to bigger chunks of writing. Session 18 is on the use of articles. Again, this is one of the major areas of difficulties when it comes to reading and writing both in English for the Pakistani students, because of the differences that we have in the use of articles in our mother tongue or first language. We find a lot of difficulties when it comes to the application of articles in English. When it comes to writing, students use the definite and indefinite articles very incorrectly. So the session presents examples, activities, and of course the sets of rules, how, where, and more importantly why to use a particular article in a particular context. The next two sessions, 19 and 20, are about punctuation. Again, punctuation works like traffic lights that guides you through any piece of reading to understand it, and any piece of writing as you write. If you use punctuation correctly, actually you enable the reader of that piece of writing to understand and comprehend it in a better way. The rules of punctuation are many, and I have tried to cover a lot of them in these two sessions by giving examples and lot of activities for your practice. Session 21 is on the use of prepositions, which again is a very important area of writing, and again Pakistani students, because of the influence of their first language, find it very difficult to use the English prepositions correctly. So our complete session is devoted to the rules, and I have given you examples by showing how each rule in the use of prepositions is to be applied. You need to notice that the sessions, session 22, 23 and 24, they are particularly related to academic writing. Till this point, that is till session 21, general rules of writing and general issues are addressed, but when it comes to academic writing, it has certain features that are very important and that are to be taken care of. So these three sessions present those rules or features that are related to academic writing and provide some practice in academic writing as well, because this is the most relevant type of writing for students in academic contexts. With this, we move on to the next sessions, and these sessions actually are a movement from the sentence level to the paragraph levels and beyond. Mainly number 25 session is on sentence transformation, where I have shared the possibilities by giving rules and a lot of examples and activities, how one thing, the same thing, can be said in different ways by transforming the sentence yet retaining the same meaning. This would enable students to express themselves in a better way with a level of comfort in different writing contexts. In session 26 and 27, I have talked about paragraph development. Mainly 26th session is about paragraph development and how the essentials of paragraph are to be constructed, whereas the 27th session or the lecture, it is more focused on introducing to you different types of paragraphs and by giving you examples as well as tips how to write different sorts of paragraphs in different contexts. As you were looking through the different approaches presented in different books of looking at study skills and different types of study skills later on, you would have noticed that there were a lot of other things that are included in study skills apart from communication skills. That is why you can see that the session that is developing an outline and using a dictionary is included as session 28. In the same way, session 29 and 30 are respectively about notes taking and presentation skills. Moving towards the closure of the course in lesson 31 or session 31, that is on doing research, I have introduced what research is, what are its main types, and what are the ethics of research, so that you could do your research assignments, research projects, etc., and could do it with a level of comfort. The last session of the course is lesson 32, which is designed as managing distance learning. This actually is designed to complete the circle, and from where we started the study skills course, it would take us by completing the circle to the same point where we would have completed and covered all the communication skills and other study skills, including time management, stress management, self-evaluation, etc. My dear students, these are the details of the different topics, subtopics, areas or lessons that you would cover in this course. Now that you have been introduced to the course contents that you would study in this course, let's start working on the course. Starting working on your study skills, at the outset, the most important thing that you need to do is understanding your needs. This is a part of study skills, that you understand what are the needs that you have as a learner. After all, why are you studying? This might seem a strange question at first, but it is important for you to be quite clear why you have made your commitment to study. When the going gets tough, it is helpful to remind yourself of your reasons for starting studying and why these reasons are important to you. It's not very wise to start a course because someone else wants you to do it. You have to put it in hard work in it and not them. So you must want to do it for your own sake. Some of your reasons may relate specifically to why you are studying by distance learning. So identify yourself as a learner and put yourself in the context where and what you are learning and what are your needs of learning. The purpose of doing all this is because you need motivation to learn. Motivation, especially self-motivation, isn't always easy. You need to have goals to provide a driving force. As well as knowing why you want to study, effective learning also depends upon you knowing what it is you want to study. You are probably using this guide after enrolling on your course of study, but you may not yet have taken decisions about other courses or the courses that you would be picking up in future. So you need to have a clear idea of the knowledge and skills you would like to possess by the end of your studies. The light at the end of the tunnel is a great motivational factor, and the one that has kept, I would say, keep me going on. Whether the course is for a job-related qualification which will achieve promotion, advancement, or a pay rise, or even just the personal satisfaction and pride that completion will bring. You need to be clear on why you want to study. This would help you have better motivation. This brings us to the question, what qualities do you need to be an effective distant learner? Well, do a small activity on it. Make a note of those personal attributes and skills that you think you need if you are successful to complete your distance learning course. Two suggestions are motivation, initiative. You can add to this and you can create a list of all this. By the way, all these headings that I have covered on the previous few slides with you, they are taken from Talbot Christine's Studying at a Distance, a Guide for Students. Well, many personal attributes and skills needed for studying at a distance are the same as those required by any other learner, but some take on greater significance when learning at a distance. The following have been suggested by students who have studied at a distance: self-confidence, perseverance or resilience, determination, self-discipline, time management skills, forward planning or future planning, effective communication skills, ability to take responsibility for your learning, a balanced learning style, critical reading and note-making skills, IT skills, information literacy skills. I hope by so far you would have created your own list as well. Compare this list with the list that you have created for yourself. Before we move on with the contents of the course, I would also like to share the difficulties that may hinder your way. When it comes to studying and learning, sometimes there are difficulties with finding time to study. Or you may find it difficult to have the confidence to start studying again after many years. There can be problems with writing essays again, coping with stress at the time of the examinations, being motivated enough to persevere when not attending university or college on a regular basis. As a distance learner, this may be one of big hurdles for you. You may feel isolated because of not seeing fellow students regularly, feeling disheartened or unsure of progress because of not seeing the tutor regularly, because of not getting immediate feedback. There might be hindrances or difficulties regarding keeping a balance between the work required for the face-to-face and distance learning elements of the course. And there also can be problems of not having the self-discipline to get down to doing the work. Sometimes distance learning students find some other problems as well. For example, finding somewhere quiet to work, or finding the level of the course too high to be able to complete it. Sometimes there is a problem with coping with learning a whole new vocabulary relevant to the course. Students may also find sometimes difficult to use technology, such as using the internet to communicate with others and submit assignments. There can be pressures related to working and learning according to the rules of a different academic or educational culture. So these are the difficulties that you have to learn to cope with on a distance learning degree, and the purpose of the study skill course is to prepare you to handle all this efficiently and effectively. Answering the question how to handle all this, I would say it is important that you keep a balance. Keeping a balance in how far you are satisfied with your time management is very, very important. There is, however, no escaping the fact that studying is hard work and you need to be fully committed to the whole process. But you must not let it take over your whole life. What is potentially a rewarding and enjoyable experience can easily become only a chore if you don't maintain a healthy balance between studying and other aspects of your life. So if the difficulty is balancing work, home, family and studying commitments, the strategy can be prioritizing and planning. That is, day for study, day for time with family, day for other commitments and activities, it is important to keep everything in balance. If you decide that you are taking a few hours off or even a whole day with no studying and no work, then do it and don't feel guilty. Otherwise, you will not feel the benefit. And don't feel that you have to fill your time off with doing things. Sometimes it's good just to be. Likewise, if you set aside a time for studying, worrying about domestic chores or other things will be counterproductive. So what I mean by this is, in your time schedule, the part that you have allocated to studying, do your studies rigorously at that time, but when you are away from studies doing other things, give the due share to the other things and people in your lives. I think it would be a good idea for you to take a few minutes now to reflect upon your attitude towards time and on how well you use time. Note down a sentence or two that encapsulates these thoughts. So write about your time management and your situation in a couple of sentences. Sometimes writing that helps you to have a conscious realization of the benefits and advantages related to your situation, as well as the weaknesses or the flaws of your situation. At the outset of study skills course, it is also very important for you to know that assessing information as a distance student is very, very important for you. You need to know how would you judge. You need to know what would be the way to judge how do you handle information. Learning is essentially the acquisition of new skills, knowledge and attitudes, and the recognition of how they relate to the skills, knowledge and attitudes you already possess. But learning is also the process of understanding what has been acquired and applying it to both familiar and new situations. As Karen Rollins 1996 suggests, learning is a process of self-development. And students learn most effectively by relating knowledge to previous and current experience. Learning is not just about collecting information from your tutors, your course materials, or library resources. It is also about engaging with and making use of that information in a creative way. You can't be a successful student if you expect to be passively taught. You need to be prepared to actively learn. And this is the stance that actually you need to take not only throughout this course but also on your other courses as well. Your course will equip you with the means to do this by providing materials, yes, but also by giving you the opportunity to develop your own ideas by trying them out with your fellow students, with your tutors, with yourself most importantly. At this point, I would like you to list the various ways in which you, as a distance learner, are likely to access information for learning. Two suggestions are by reading the learning materials provided in workbooks, study packs, online, etc. By observing someone at work on the television or on video perform a task, etc. Can you think of a few more ways of learning as a distance learner? Once you have created your list, I would like you to move on to the next slide. Here are a few more possibilities. By reading books and articles found by searching library resources, by assessing information on a CD-ROM or via the internet, that is e-learning or online learning, by assessing information, by accessing information from professional associations, by discussing subjects with other students, either face-to-face or via internet. You can be part of online discussion groups that you can make voluntarily. By discussing subjects with your tutors if possible, either face-to-face or via email, or any other contact person if you have any problem regarding anything, by examining a picture or diagram on paper. By thinking something through and considering all of the options based on your present knowledge and making an educated guess about what might be the result of certain actions. This is critical thinking, by the way. By attempting problem solving, that is trying something out to see if it works and revising the method in the light of the results. And finally, by reading recommended textbooks, details of which are provided by your course or module tutors. By the way, you would see that throughout the course, at the end of almost every session, there would be a list of related website links, important books, articles and resources that you can access. Since you are starting on the course, I think it would be a good idea for you to check your study skills. Here is a study skill checklist. What you can do is read each statement and consider how it applies to you. If it does apply to you, check Y. If it does not apply to you, check N. That is for no. The purpose of this inventory is to find out about your own study habits and attitudes. The more you would know yourself as a learner, the better you would work on your study skills and your study habits. So here we go. Number 1. I spend too much time studying for what I am learning. Y or N? Yes or no? You can take any for yourself. Number 2. I usually spend hours cramming the night before an exam. Number 3, if I spend as much time on my social activities as I want to, I don't have enough time left to study. Or when I study enough, I don't have time for a social life. 4, I usually try to study with the radio and TV turned on. 5, I can't sit and study for long periods of time without becoming tired or distracted. 6, my study notes are sometimes difficult to understand later. 7. I usually seem to get the wrong material into my notes. 8. I don't review my notes periodically throughout the semester in preparation for tests. Number 9. When I get to the end of a chapter, I can't remember what I have just read. Mark each of these as yes or no. With this, we move on to number 10. I don't know how to pick out what is important in the text. I can't keep up with my reading assignments and then I have to cram the night before a test. I lose a lot of points on essay tests when I know the material well. Number 13, I study enough for my test, but when I get there, my mind goes blank. Number 14, I often study in a haphazard, disorganized way under the threat of the next test. Number 15, I often find myself getting lost in the details of reading and have trouble identifying the main ideas. 16. I rarely change my reading speed in response to the difficulty level of the selection or my familiarity with the content. 17. I often wish that I could read faster. 18. When my teachers assign papers, I feel so overwhelmed that I can't get started. 19. I usually write my papers the night before they are due. And 20. I can't seem to organize my thoughts into a paper that makes sense. If you have answered yes to 2 or more questions in any category, it means you need to work seriously on that area. If you have 1 or no yes in a category, you are probably proficient enough in these areas, but you can always improve. Now question 1, 2 and 3 were related to time scheduling. 4 and 5 related to concentration, and in the same way 6, 7 and 8 questions were related to listening and note taking. 9, 10 and 11 were about reading. 12, 13, 14 and 15 related to exams. 15, 16 and 17 again related to reading, whereas 18, 19 and 20 were about writing skills. So you can check your responses in relation to these areas. You can identify your weak areas and your strong areas so that you could decide how much you would work on which area. Dear students, near the end of the course, when we would reach the last session, again we would do a self-evaluation activity where you would have a chance to evaluate yourself again on a checklist to see how far you have developed your study skills and how far you have improved your study habits. Now that you have checked your study skills level and your habits, you have also identified your strong and weak areas. This is the time to get started. To get started, it is good to make a schedule. Make every hour count. A schedule should take into account every class, laboratory, lecture, social event and other work in which you engage. There are givens such as classes and so on that have to be incorporated. You must focus on the other free time available and how you will use it. Make a weekly schedule and block off the 24-hour day in 1-hour increments. Indicate times for study, lectures, social and work time. Also block off a period for sleeping each day. With what is left over, plan time for study. This gives you a rough roadmap of the time available. Of course, you can revise your schedule as circumstances warrant. The question is when to study. Well, the problem of when to study is critical. A good rule of thumb is that studying should be carried out only when you are rested, alert, and have planned for it. Last-minute studying just before an exam is usually a waste of time. Well, making schedules is very good, but you can also revise a schedule when required. Don't be afraid to revise your schedule. Schedules are really plans for how you intend to use your time. If your schedule doesn't work, revise it. You must understand that your schedule is to help you develop good study habits. Once you have developed them, schedule building becomes easier. At the outset, it is also important that you take care of your study space. Your study space should be as quiet and comfortable as possible. Avoid studying in noisy places such as cafeterias, recreation rooms, or lounges. When studying, keep a waste basket handy so that you could dispose of unnecessary, not needed kind of materials, and you don't have to stand up frequently from your seat and leave your place. Have a consistent place for everything, and above all, keep it there. Have everything needed for studying handy beforehand. Don't waste valuable time looking for books, notes of other information, etc. After you have assembled the items you need, put them where you can reach them easily so that you are not distracted during your study. Here are a few quick suggestions to improve your distance learning skills that you can apply for your study skills course. Number one is your level of motivation. As a distance student, you will need to be a self-directed learner. To ensure that you can do this, you need to be highly motivated. The best way to stay sharp is to have a clear goal in mind for what you want to achieve through your education. If you are working toward a degree, your goal may be to finish your degree and change careers. Second important thing for you as a distance learner skill is your time. Time management skills are essential in distance learning. Before signing up for your distance course, ensure you have enough time to spend on the course. As a general rule, allow 2 hours of study for every hour of class. For example, if you have 2 hours of class time, lecture time, or session time, a week you should spend 4 hours studying. Approximately 6 hours study per week would be good. Once you know how much time you need to spend, create a schedule according to that. It is also important that you know your target. A good way to stay successful is to set goals. The more you do now, the easier it will be at the end. Break large pieces of work into small pieces. It will make life as a student easier. It is also very important at the outset of your studies that you know your materials. One great advantage of distance courses is that you are able to view and review your courses and materials as and when you need to do that. My dear students, this was the introductory session on study skills that I have just shared with you. Before I close today's session, I would like to share a quick review of the session. I introduced to you what are study skills and shared a wider perspective on study skills. Then I talked about why the development of study skills is important for you. Next, I talked about study skills for distance learners and the role of study skills in distance learning. I also addressed the issue of knowing yourself as a distance learner. Then I shared with you what you generally find in study skill courses and books. I shared 4 examples of books on study skills courses, and then I presented the study skills course contents of the current course to you. Towards the end of the session, we discussed what study skills are important for you and what are the different types of study skills that you can use for yourself. And before closing the session, I shared with you how you can improve your distance learning study skills with the help of certain tips. I hope the session would have helped you understand what study skills are and what is their role in your studies. Thank you very much.